So I think we're going to have to figure out these transits together a little bit. Now, let me see if I can move this just a little bit. This video is clearly a continuation of yesterday's video, and we're talking about the transits that are going on right now. And yesterday we covered the Mars square Pluto, which is going to occur in about an hour and 15 minutes time, that is happening today, July the 1st. The next couple of transits that we're going to be discussing are Mercury squaring Neptune and trining Saturn, or rather trining Saturn and squaring Neptune in that order on July 2nd, which is tomorrow. And if we make it that far in 20 minutes, frankly, that would be a miracle, but there's more to talk about. We also covered yesterday that there are important long-term transits, Pluto in Capricorn, so Pluto transforming the part of your chart, the house that is occupied by Capricorn, and working to finish this transition, and that the transits right now, particularly the transits that go through Aries and Taurus, setting up a conversation with the planets with Pluto in Capricorn, and indeed the planets as they transit the sign of Cancer, and this will oppose Pluto as well. So that's the first planet where there are conversations that are happening. The second set of conversations are happening with Saturn in Aquarius. Long-standing behaviors and patterns that are no longer serving you, around which there are lessons to be learned and incorporated, a new set of behaviors to be adopted, that likely are going to be hard to learn, but really Saturn requires you to show up as the best version of yourself and really understand consequence, how it is that you take a certain action and what that action's result is. Sometimes this means that boundaries have to be set and reset, or set with greater firmness. Sometimes it means that it's our own behavior that is causing certain unwanted reactions, and Saturn makes us sit up and pay attention to what it is that we're doing that is creating a certain type of consequence in the part of the chart that is occupied by the sign of Aquarius. Neptune sits in Pisces, and there were eclipses of release in Pisces in 2014 to 16. So yes, it could be that Neptune's transit is leading to greater artistic or spiritual transformation in the part of the chart that is occupied by Pisces, but for many people there could also be lying, deceit, theft, deception that is going on. The next sign, if we go in order after Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, is Aries. And here we have the first set of planets that are in dynamic conversation right now. And when I said we really will figure this out together, it's because there's definitely an energy of unrest in the air astrologically. And even though I offer a relatively straightforward and simple explanation of squares, 90-degree angles made by planets, I describe it as planets coming to a stop sign, there being a bit of a stare down, and the faster moving planet needing to go first or finish whatever it's required to finish in the part of the chart that it occupies, for the slower moving planet to do whatever work it needs to do. The first of the squares that was addressed in the new moon in Cancer video is that as the new moon, just before the new moon occurred in Cancer, there was a square to Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter creates the end of a 12-year cycle and the start of a 12-year cycle in whatever part of the chart that it transits. It's going to be doing this in the part of the chart that is occupied by Aries between January and, well, I was going to say May, but that's not true actually. It's not January and May, forgive me. It's May to October of 2022. Thank you. May to October 2022, and then January through May of 2023. Okay. So it could be that before the new moon, a requirement has been set up for some sort of action to be taken in the Cancer part of your chart. And indeed, we're in the Cancer lunation cycle. We just had a new moon in Cancer 3 days ago, on June the 28th. And so as we head through the month of July, where the sign of Cancer sits in our chart, may give us powerful clues about what needs to be addressed. And the new moon was conjunct Lilith. So it may very well be that we are forced to deal with questions around what we will and will not tolerate moving forward. With Lilith, these kinds of questions are very, they hit to the very core of our essence with regard to what we will or will not tolerate. And often with Lilith, it involves a kind of walking away from something in order to be able to live with oneself, because one has reclaimed a certain dominion over oneself, because often there are power dynamics at play that the Lilith side of us contends with and determines with regard to where our boundaries and authenticity towards those power dynamics really are, and how are we going to address them and deal with them. Should I stay or should I go? Do I tolerate this or do I not? Now with Lilith, as I've mentioned, a lot of these behaviors get clubbed into terms like shadow side, destructive behavior, self-destructive behavior, anger, revenge, power dynamics. And I would simply ask everyone right now to just focus on the truth of the situation and where that truth hits you. And the truth is subjective. That in itself is a statement that will cause a certain amount of angst, but for the purpose of this video, your truth, how something feels, and what feels comfortable to you or not. I would just say before responding, and the fact that I use the word respond means that I am advocating that unless it is truly a situation that merits it, and sometimes there can be a situation that merits it, I'm suggesting a response and not a reaction. Respond, not react, unless the situation merits an immediate action, like a call to 911. To at least understand that this Lilith part of us will be activated enough to really prompt us to tap into an aspect of our sense of self-worth and authenticity. The second square that is occurring in an hour's time is Mars square Pluto, a dynamic, violent, assertive, aggressive square with battling tendencies, warlike tendencies. It's been interesting as this has been happening. There's been a lot of news recently about people being sued over past commissions, not just one case, but 2 or 3 cases. There's so much in the air right now about lawsuits and fights and battles of a certain kind. And as I look at this, of course, it makes me think of 2 of the squares in question, Mars square Pluto and Mercury square Neptune. Irrespective, some action with the new moon, I'm not going to say the new moon, with the sun and the moon squaring Jupiter before the new moon, some assessment, some action is prompted in the Cancer part of our chart that ties into our sense of self-worth and what we will or will not tolerate with regard to asserting or at least recognizing, respecting our own sense of autonomy. That then permits Jupiter to create the new beginning that Jupiter is trying to create in the Aries part of the chart. In addition, there's some action either around the pursuit of goals or related to conflict, attack and defense. Boundaries again come up in the Aries part of the chart that are required for Pluto to complete and continue its transition. All is not hinging on these transits, however, because, as I mentioned yesterday, Mars on August the 14th within Taurus will trine Pluto, and Mars on July the 5th will move into Taurus, a sign that it is not comfortable in. It has trouble expressing its rather direct and forthright and assertive energy in a sign like Taurus, which is slow and steady and considered wins the race, and Mars is off to the races before the signal is given. It is But irrespective of the discomfort, we're going to need Mars's energy in the Taurus part of our chart, where again we're dealing with some long-standing transits. Uranus and Taurus, we are being made to level up, experience quantum leaps of authenticity and awakening in the Taurus part of our chart. And we have the North Node, which is aiding this. And at the end of July, the North Node and Mars and Uranus conjunct. Amazing. 31st of July and August the 1st. And this is where we need to pour all of our attention. This is where it's kind of make or break time. This is where it is pour all your energy into this part of the chart, because this is where this awakening is happening. And as the planets have been transiting through, and you will have experienced this by now, as planets have transitioned through the Taurus part of your chart, they have definitely contributed to the transformation that is going on in the Capricorn part of the chart, because as the planets transit through Taurus, as they reach the end of Taurus, they trine Pluto, and Mars is going to do this on August the 14th. So while Mars squares Pluto today, it gets a chance then to trine Pluto on August the 14th. There's a lot, I would say, the new moon is now a couple of days behind us. The moon is going to start to grow in size. There's a lot that we have to pay attention to as the next 2 weeks occur, and as we head towards the Capricorn full moon. Again, Capricorn full moon on July the 13th, because tomorrow, Mercury, the planet of communication, I'm just going to use that word, cognition, communication, transactions, but for our purpose, for the most part, cognition. I am so sorry, I set an alarm, and of course the alarm went off, and when an alarm goes on your phone, the video cuts off. Cognition, communication, Mercury. Something is being communicated. Some communication either comes through or needs to happen to confront this Neptune energy in Pisces that takes us back to 2014, 15, 16, but this part of the chart where we have this feeling of deceit and gaslighting. But Mercury also trines Saturn. Now, as I've mentioned to you, Mercury is in Gemini. This Mercury retrograde we had in May between Gemini and Taurus links up for me, as I've mentioned to you before, whatever's going on in the sign of Gemini supports whatever's going on in Taurus and challenges, or at least gives us more information with regard to what is going on in this kind of Pisces part of the chart. It also supports the Aquarius part of the chart, where Saturn is asking us to level up with a new set of behaviors. And it could be two different sets of people or one set of people. So it could be two different sets of people associated with the Gemini part of the chart. What do I mean by that? If Gemini is in your third house and your Aries rising, it could be that it's two sets of siblings or relatives. It could mean that one set is siblings or relatives, one set is neighbors or your immediate community, or even your colleagues, who it is that constitutes your community today in this kind of virtual environment that we live in. Some of whom are associated with the Taurus part of the chart and new developments that have been brewing since September to November of last year, and some of whom are associated with this Pisces part of the chart where there's a certain amount of murkiness. It could be that in both these cases, there is development and murkiness. Mercury's transit coming up tomorrow on the heel of these squares, I think it gives us information. Now, it could be that something is being written up, drafted, communicated, contracted, and it could be that this something, Venus's presence in Gemini is certainly going to help, because Mercury trines and squares on July the 2nd, Venus trines Saturn on July the 13th, the day of the Capricorn full moon, and then squares Neptune on July the 14th. This could either mean that there's a financial consequence to whatever is going on with regard to communication right now, that talks both to the deceptiveness part of the chart and also the progress part of the chart related to Taurus. So the deceptive part of the chart related to the Pisces as part of our chart, and the progress part of the chart related to the Taurus part of the chart. As I said, it could be one incident, it could be two separate incidences. The thing that I will point out to you is that no matter what is going on at present, even if there's some sort of a theft associated with it, and even if something is being built up, Mars comes into Gemini on August the 20th, goes retrograde October 20th, there's a Gemini full moon on December the 8th, Mars goes direct on January the 12th, and Mars leaves Gemini March the 25th. During that time, Mars squares Neptune and trines Saturn 3 times. So whatever's going on now in the realm of communication with a financial or relationship consequence in a couple of weeks' time could very well get fought and battled in the last quarter of this year and the first quarter of next year. So the more that you're able to, or if we go with the positive angle of something positive being put in place, it could mean that whatever is being communicated and comes to some sort of financial relationship offer by the middle of this month in July, that could very much be in line with whatever's coming up at the end of the month with this Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction, then sees action and revision in the last quarter of this year. And can I comfortably say the last quarter of this year? Yeah, pretty much, because Mars trines Saturn on September 28th, so almost October, November, December. Well, maybe starting September to December, September to March, in that time frame, while Mars is doing its thing in Gemini. The people associated with, or themes associated with the Gemini part of the chart, support the Taurus part of our chart, need to be dealt with in order to address any deception in the Pisces part of the chart, and support the lessons that we're having to learn in the Saturn part of our chart. And it's a tense time because it's bringing matters to a head. And as I've mentioned to you, July is an extremely important month, but July and August continue to be months where action needs to be taken, probably to help mitigate some of the tension that will come up, from between September and March. Now, the tension could be positive because things are being implemented and action is being taken and things are being done in a positive way, in a constructive way, or it can mean that action is being taken and has to be taken with regard to conflict and defense. I would imagine that I have probably, I understand and I respect that knowing your chart makes today's video and yesterday's video that much more important. I would just say, if you don't know your chart, if there's a feeling of unrest and uneasiness, and as I said to you before, yesterday, speaking or acting from a place of higher self-worth can resolve issues that came up during Mercury retrograde in May of this year for the most part, because you are likely not going to come from a place of insecurity. This could mean that things continue to get built constructively. It could mean that certain things end. Because when you're coming from a place of self-worth and not coming from a place of insecurity, it's unlikely you're no longer coming from a place of lack. You're no longer coming from a place of fear of losing something. And so as things are brought up and you check in with that Lilith part of yourself that says, I'm okay with this, I'm absolutely not okay with this. And as I said to you, if you end up saying yes to something you want to say no to, or no to something you want to say yes to, just own the decision. Because it may be that maybe you need to take a job or something for the money because you don't feel like right now you have a choice. I'm not going to judge you for that. This is a YouTube channel. Take what resonates with you on this and ignore the rest by all means. But in certain cases, I have a feeling that if something doesn't sit right, people will be like, I am going to take responsibility for this. I will deal with the consequences. I'm going to walk away from this even though I kind of feel like I need it. In other cases, people may feel like I've got to do this because it will help me do that. Then in that case, just be very clear about what that goal is. Because if you end up actually entering something with that Lilith part of you, you're not completely honoring, it will probably fall apart. Then the Lilith behaviors of anger and walking out and um, the shadow side, so to speak, and the destructiveness will emerge because you are entering a situation and saying yes where you mean no and saying no where you mean yes. And with Lilith, it's impactful. It's something that you really know. You'll know if you're being bamboozled or not. You'll know if there's a power play going on or not. You know if you're being lied to or not. So own the decisions. And with Venus and Gemini building to the same square and trine by the middle of July that Mercury is making tomorrow, there is the possibility, if we can get to that space of responding, not reacting, of really trying to become as fact-based as possible, of investigation, of asking, but because through that process, it could very well be the energy or the need to resolve things is a very present and alive right now. Very present and alive in July. So that by the time you get to the end of July, you can really avail of that conjunction between the North Node. And so the mess that needs to be cleaned up in the Pisces part of the chart, the lessons that need to be learned in the Aquarius part of the chart, the transformation that needs to be enabled even more in the Capricorn part of the chart, the leaning into the Taurus part of the chart, the dealing with people sitting in the Gemini part of the chart, there's an invitation to do so. There's just plenty of potential, plenty of explosive potential in the chart. And some of the explosive potential, again, has a slightly, because they're things that are squaring Neptune, that can have a slightly deceptive quality. But there's also support in the chart. So there's an invitation to action. The question is, can the action be taken from a place of fundamental security? And I can't tell you what that is and what that means to you. I can use the F word, faith. I can use the concept of trying to know and understanding where your source is so that you know what to say yes to and what to say no to. At the same time, I have to respect what this might mean to everyone right now, and each one of us needing to take stock of where we're at and make our decisions from there. But the past 2 or 3 days, the energy may have felt very internal, but the energy is starting to feel necessarily more and more external. And there's an invitation to really move towards resolution, whatever that might look like. Because if it's a situation that needs to end, then at least if you resolve it, and even if it upsets you, I won't use the word angers you, at least then you'll know whether you remain in the situation or are now out of it, which then creates the opportunity to move forward, however challenging it may seem to leave a situation that felt like there was something there that was not what it turned out to, blah, blah, blah. At least a blank slate might be better than a messy slate that is taking up a lot of your psychic energy. So nothing wrong as we head into this 4th of July weekend with taking stock of where things are at and trying to get to a centered place of determining what we feel our actions need to be. And then letting our sense of timing determine what those actions need to be and how we take them. But the invitation to that action is there. So something needs to be tackled in the Cancer part of the chart as it ties to our sense of autonomy. And I point to our gut here. I just point to the solar plexus there. Certainly there's an indication that something needs to be done in the Aries part of the chart as we head into today. And some of this might be behind us over the next few days, but it continues. And some form of action clearly needs to be taken related to, today is the day of interruptions, clearly. So I'm going to, luckily, I know how to edit the videos, so it'll be fine. You'll see one seamless video. Gone are the days when I would just deal with an interruption and just put things up when the video got cut off. And clearly with this Mars-Pluto square, the complexity with the Mars-Pluto square comes to the fact that there's all this activity happening at the same time. If you have a Mars-Pluto square and it's relatively isolated, it's much easier to pinpoint. It's just at present, it's just contributing to this unrest. Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. And, let's not leave out the Scorpio eclipses too, because we've got the Taurus eclipses and Scorpio eclipses. That's 2/3 of the chart that is activated in some way. So, and typically by this particular time in the eclipse cycle, by the time we're done, I would have said that by the time we got to about July the 7th, all the eclipsy pieces would have fallen to the floor, and we would be dealing with the consequences of that and start to put Humpty Dumpty back together again between September 8th and November 8th. This year, that's not even the case. This year, Mars's transit in Taurus is actually turning out to be more welcome than not, because we know that action just needs to be taken in that part of the chart. It's like, Mars, come on in, because there's just this energy or this air of unrest, confusion, feeling like things need to be done, feeling like things need to be addressed, feeling like the Mercury retrograde gave us more information that we did not have prior to May the 10th about something, and incorporating that and figuring out how to get everyone around the table. Are certain things still active and relevant? Are they not? More to the point, are there places where action needs to be taken in the spirit of self-protection? And underneath all this is, in capital letters, the word truth. What is really going on? And what is really on the table and off the table? And what is really going to work for us and what is not going to work for us? Now, today's video, for all intents and purposes, is about Mercury in Gemini, trining Saturn, and squaring Neptune. So, some sort of action that supports the lessons, some sort of communication. It could even be, depending on where this activity is taking place, as I said, it could even be internal enough that something in your brain that just goes, aha. Some sort of communication, some sort of conversation, some sort of meeting, some sort of email, some sort of stuff in writing is floating around somewhere. Whether you're actually the recipient of it, whether you are the subject of it, whether you are a subject of it, something related to communication is going on. And there's something that needs to be, whatever I've been saying over the past few videos applies. That's what I'm going to say. And with Venus coming up to the same square and trine, she will and could bring a certain amount of sweetness in the air, a certain amount of financial reward. You could even get financial opportunities. Could be connected to the Taurus part of your chart. But it could also be that if you're looking at the Pisces part of the chart, that finances are somehow at stake in this deception. And then, as I told you, by the time we get to Mars's entry here, the question is, how much can you move towards resolving in July so that there's less tumult between September 2022 and March 2023? And if you want to meditate, I would say some action needs to be taken related to the Cancer part of your chart. And I would say the biggest thing to meditate on is what are the lessons that Saturn is trying to teach you in the Aquarius part of your chart. And remember, those lessons could be boundaries against people or situations. Those lessons could be around things that you have been doing habitually that are hurting you in terms of consequence. So it could be boundaries against yourself. Stop doing that. Because this is what ends up happening as a consequence. These are patterns and boundaries that have been going on for 28 years that Saturn is trying to invite you to level up in. And with Saturn, with planets, when they transit, for example, the first house or the second house, it's very likely to be you taking action. If they're floating around the 7th house and the 8th house. It could be other people taking. So if Saturn was transiting your first house, I would say that there's every chance of possibility that you felt that you needed to assert certain boundaries. If Saturn is transiting your 7th or 8th house, it could very well be that others are feeling like they need to assert certain boundaries on you, and that's where you're getting the Saturnian pressure. That's where the Saturnian lessons are. So what do you do so that less of that happens? Now, sometimes it can mean, well, then, if they set the boundaries, well, then I've got it could mean just conflict. And sometimes it can mean, I'll talk about myself. What would Abi 2.0 do that Abi 1.0 would not have done that will lead to a better outcome? That could apply to all of us. Okay, I'm going to leave it at this. This is a long video, and more than anything else, it's just an acknowledgement that if things feel funky right now, and if we have a bee in our bonnet, or if we have ants in our pants and we feel like we're starting to get antsy, to take some action, both constructive resolution and protective resolution, I think that's about right. And it could very well be that as the moon continues to expand, even over the weekend, you decide to start to put your thoughts together and figure out what it is that you need to do and how you need to go about it, etc. And next week, as you head to the Capricorn full moon, could be a time of action. As Venus gets ready to square Neptune and trine Saturn. And finances and relationships might be more at stake as we head to the Capricorn full moon. As best you can, embrace the ants in the pants being the bonnet feeling and use it to spur action. And try to see if the action can be, this is difficult, can take advantage of Venus and Gemini. And try and access that Venusian, not coming from a place of insecurity, because otherwise it's very possible that over the next month that Lilith part of us will be triggered with regard to, as the truth emerges, it could very well be that that we go to this place of this is going to work for me and this is not going to work for me. There's something really, this is what is going to feel right and fair and appropriate and in the spirit of partnership. And this just feels out and out wrong, like someone is being deceitful. And I'm being polite because when there are power struggles in relationships, deceit is it's being bamboozled, that you really have to kind of be concerned about. Bullshit. All right, I will leave it at this. I hope it resonated. Feel free to like, share, comment on, subscribe to my YouTube channel, click the bell icon and the wiggly bell icon on top when you click on the bell icon to be notified when I do new videos. I will continue to noodle on the energy of these transits and more will follow. Even though the Mercury transits are happening tomorrow, I'm gonna sit with that a little bit more and see if I can come up with something that I'm happier with. Thanks for your patience. Take care.